go. Right. Hello, the four of you. Someone can see us then.
Someone can see all of us.
Running Dak can see all of us, so that is good.
All of us in the sense of the four rather than the whole.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I can't see my Crocs.
Mercifully not. What are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing here?
What the hell are we doing? Oh yeah, that's what we're doing.
God, my desktop is just a disaster. I've got far too many things going on concurrently at the moment.
What the hell is Mystery Hour on LBC, James London? It may be the whole of you if you don't have anything below the waist, says Running Dak. Yeah. No.
Every week, James O'Brien enlists the help of LBC listeners to solve the questions you've always wondered the answer to.
We get Tim's dad here more often than we get Tim.
Yeah.
To be fair, we make
I
less
think
of
he has done
demands
4 on the bounce.
paid to
Has
do.
he? Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't been here because I haven't been here.
Oh, yeah, that would explain it.
Oh, waiting for a new beta for my my iPad Pro. It's not out yet.
Contrary Gaskus, are you actually an AI? Because you had that little icon next to you for quite a while.
Am I really quiet? They're saying I'm really quiet.
You're okay now. I think
A
you just.
little.
Is that the volume slider thing here?
Yeah, that will.
Or no, it's not. It's the one in the OS, isn't it? Because
Could be
this
either,
one
but
is for only for with us inside thing.
Is that right?
I think so. It affects the live call, but not the recording. So if I turn that up to there, have I suddenly got much louder?
A bit louder for
And
me.
am
don't
I
know
much
about-
louder for people on the channel? Okay, better, he says.
Fair enough.
Okay. Am I
Yeah,
still
I'm-
quiet, Captain Kremen?
I'm just going to post this in the podcast chat for Darian. He just reminded me of something.
Okay.
But you can all have a look. It was an app
One,
that
two,
was
three,
flagged
four,
under my
five.
nose yesterday. You just said your
Okay.
desktop
How
was a
much?
mess.
My desktop really is a mess. But it's not that I've got a lot of icons on my desktop. It's got loads and loads of windows open for completely separate.
All right. Oh, this may not be
projects and
useful
things,
at all. But
Yeah, if it could just do all my work for me, that would be great.
How do we set up PC Pro podcast tags, Cole? We are Discord morons, I think. Here.
Don't
What the
know,
hell
so
is a
have to learn
tag?
Don't know. I've never
So-
really got massively into Discord. I'll be honest.
yeah, I'm 50 years old. If I spend too much time in Discord, there's questions asked.
I'm 61. What do you think it says for me?
Yeah, even more questions asked. Probably knock on the door.
Yeah, the men in the white suits. 30 seconds.
True
Oh,
fact.
dear.
Where are my notes?
Now, Tim is on his way down to Bristol, he told me this morning, to look at the
silly.
unveiling of the new supercomputer or something.
Oh yeah, it's gone for HP, isn't he? Probably breaking an embargo here, but never mind. Don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell them your name, Pike.
We are actually broadcasting live on YouTube. So,
Are we?
1 o'clock. Yes.
We'll come round and hunt both listeners down.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Thursday, the 17th of July, and I'm Barry Collins, News and Features Editor of PC Pro. And with me today, I've got Darian Graham-Smith,
Hello there.
got Lee Grant,
Good afternoon.
and John Honeyball.
Super duper.
Okay, so we're starting with you, John, and WeTransfer's got itself into a bit of a hole this week.
They have, and it's one of those sort of take a shotgun, aim at both feet, and pull both triggers kind of thing. And it's entirely their own making, and they're stupid. And it's unfortunately one of those things that really dents your confidence in what I thought was a very capable product and platform. So WeTransfer is a file transfer site. You can basically upload a file to it and then get a URL and then give that URL to your mates or a business contact or whatever, and then they can download the file from there. The reason for doing this is still, despite us being in 2025, an awful lot of email servers have got size limits on attachments that you can send. Now, some companies like Microsoft with Outlook have done systems like transfer this file using OneDrive. So it basically creates the link having uploaded the file to your OneDrive. Apple has a similar thing as well, sending through your iCloud account. But if you want to not use that, then there are services out there like WeTransfer where you can upload your file to your account, create a link, and then give the link out. And you can do sensible and grown-up things like how many times can it be downloaded? So it can only be downloaded 5 times, for example. You can set a timeout on when the file must expire, and therefore the link won't work anymore. And you can put a password on it. So it's a pretty secure thing. And I confess, here at the lab, we've been using WeTransfer all the time. And we have a paid-for account, which is some hundreds of pounds a year, because we sometimes do big file transfers and so forth. And it's just worked great. It does what it does on the tin, and that's fine. And I had no worries about it at all until I saw a storm blow up a few days ago, because it seems that WeTransfer wants to change its license conditions. And if I just read you a couple of sentences from here and just break it down. So it goes on to say, license to WeTransfer. So it says, in order to allow us to operate, improve the service, we must get some rights from you. Perfectly reasonable. You hereby grant us a perpetual worldwide non-exclusive royalty-free transferable sub-licensable license to use your content for the purposes of operating, developing, commercializing and improving the service or new technologies. Okay, I can kind of see that. They need to look at the stuff that I've uploaded, like file sizes and so forth, to work out if they're providing a good service. I can kind of get that. Then it goes on to say, including to improve performance of machine learning models that enhance our content moderation process in accordance with the privacy and cookie policy. Now this kind of blew up big time, because you could imagine people were saying, hold on, what AI engines running across my content? Well, look at it from their point of view. A sort of a global high-speed distribution platform like this could be a very nice, easy vehicle to transfer very unpleasant material to unpleasant people. So I do get the point about needing to have some means of scanning content in order to see if there's anything nasty there. And an AI engine is obviously a pretty good thing. And you would use this to pre-filter before you send it off to a nominated adult to actually go and look at the stuff. Of course, if you have uploaded a zip file with passwords on it or encrypted files or whatever, there's nothing they can do. But I guess I am not a lawyer. Where is Roche when we need her? I would imagine that they have a perfectly reasonable defence that an encrypted file that they can't see, they can't be responsible for its dissemination, because obviously they can't see into it, so they're kind of covered. But if you were to just throw up there a whole bunch of nasty JPEGs, then it's not unreasonable for them to be able to read it. I get that point. But they went on. Such license includes the right to reproduce, distribute, modify, prepare derivative works based upon, broadcast, communicate to the public, publicly display, and perform content. You will not be entitled to compensation for any use of content by us under these terms. So what this says is that they have the right, under the new license that they're proposing, that they can do whatever the hell they like with stuff that you upload to them, including publicly display it, communicate it, broadcast it, or whatever. Now, this could be highly confidential information. In fact, we use it for transferring highly confidential information. I don't bother, and up till now I have never bothered to encrypt it before sending it up, because according to the terms and conditions and the other things they claim, like they provide an encrypted connection and encrypted storage, and only people who have got the right URL that's given out that you've generated to send out, only they can get to the file. And I felt quite comfortable that this was probably okay. But now they're actually saying that they want to have the right to distribute, modify, prepare derivative works based upon, etc., which is absolutely not allowable, full stop, under any circumstances. And I would stop using their platform on the spot. And despite the fact having paid for an annual license, I'll probably go back to them saying, "Oh, I want a refund." Now, it turns out, of course, that this is one of those kind of legal things where an idiot in the room posted this either by mistake, or they were trying it on to see if anyone would notice, and that's the bit that's obviously very worrying, because they've actually now backed down and changed this, and they have blamed. You're going to love this. They have blamed us, the users, for being confused.
No, that's unfair. They don't. They apologise quite clearly. Said that they were unclear in their terms and conditions. They didn't blame the user.
They said this passage may have caused confusion for our customers, is the quote they said to the BBC. Now, I wasn't confused at all on that sentence about giving them the right to reproduce, etc. There was no confusion in my mind. It's exactly what they said. I wasn't confused. I think they have basically been caught with their trousers down here. If that quote that was being reported in The Independent as being said to the BBC is correct. They have now
I suggest you, sorry to interrupt, but they put a blog on their site which explains it all, and they do apologise quite clearly.
Sure, this is damage reputation. Right?
Yeah, but I don't think they were blaming the user, certainly not in this piece anyway.
Well, okay. The question is, was this a screw-up or was this a punt? Either way, my confidence in their service is severely damaged. I have got excellent file sharing facilities through the Unify UNAS Pro, which is now on version 3 of its software, which I talked about some months ago. Creates a very nice link that I can send, again with passwords and expiry links and so forth. And I'm now seriously wondering why I would use WeTransfer moving forward, even though they appear to have backed down on their terms and conditions. The important point here, of course, is when you send anything out to any third-party service or whatever, you've got to be very careful about what rights they want to take from you to do what they want with the content. Now, I can kind of assume that if I was to upload something to Facebook, they might go off and do something with it, or to even to YouTube or whatever. I've uploaded it; it's kind of made public. I wouldn't expect this from a platform whose sole purpose is secure transfer of files between customers, and so this is just the bigger picture that we need to be careful of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy the conspiracy theory that they were the chance in their arm and got caught, because imagine it, if WeTransfer were taking users' files and then trying to sell them or whatever, or publish them themselves, it would instantly kill their business. It would be an overnight catastrophe. So I can't for a second think that this was them pushing their luck. This is, as we see time and again, lawyers writing the T's and C's without any regard for the English language and making the terms as all-encompassing as possible so that they have maximum legal liability. And then when people read them and go, what the hell is this? They wrote back. Adobe did it last year with their AI engine. We've seen Instagram do it in the past. Dropbox did it about 5 years ago. It's just one of those recurring problems where the lawyers overwrite the T's and C's, and people suddenly notice. But I guarantee you, if you go through all of your T's and C's from Microsoft, Adobe, all of the big companies, there's terms in there that make you go, but it's just occasionally they get picked up and turn into big.
I mean, James London on our Discord channel says your subscription money would be better spent at Dropbox. I used to use Dropbox, and we used to use it for file transfers. And because of this screw up that you've just mentioned, 5-6 years ago, something like that, was one reason why I walked away from Dropbox at the time.
Darren, I wonder if you're being a little bit generous to WeTransfer, and, although I'll rarely say this, a little bit mean to lawyers, because I've seen this sort of thing happen in two different ways quite a few times. And examples of this come to me quite a lot from my wife, who's actually her job title is head of governance, so a lot of contracts pass over her desk. And there's two ways this sort of thing often happens. One is somebody who doesn't want to get the lawyers involved, doesn't want to pay, or whatever, or just go through the admin. So they will repurpose an existing contract which appears to them, to their inexpert eye, to do the job they need, and it will include things which aren't appropriate. I've had that. I've in my freelance life, I've had so many times to send back contracts and say, what the hell is this about? This is completely irrelevant to the job I'm doing, and it seems to be a massive rights grab of rights that have nothing to do with the job we're actually talking about. The other thing is that ChatGPT and similar AI engines are generally astonishingly good at creating contracts. They've read so many of them, and they know the format, that you really can get an excellent first draft from an AI engine, but it doesn't know the particulars of your business. Now, WeTransfer obviously is a decent sized company with a reasonable budget. It would be a surprise if either of those things were really happening, if someone was just, grabbing an old contract and copy pasting, or if they were just trusting, ChatGPT to do it. But equally, I mean, I don't find it any easier to believe that they allowed their lawyers to put in a clause which allows them, among other things, to publicly display and perform the files that you upload to their service.
I find. I was just saying, Darian mentioned AI. I think someone has to ring a bell every time we do that on the show now. But directors of tech corporations, they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to act in their best interest, and usually that correlates to sweating whatever assets they've got to make as much money. And AI has sort of opened the sludge gates so that previously off-limit information, or thought to be off-limit information, can be pumped into hoppers to fuel someone's trading data. There's usually money to be made by flogging something to someone. So it doesn't surprise me that this has happened, and I think John sort of made a point about them shooting themselves in the foot, and whatever their intentions were, that statement that they put out was badly done. But I think we are going to see more and more of these sorts of terms, that we are going to look into your data and flog it to someone, sort of creeping in, because there's money to be made now. How good that data would be seems to be not really an issue at the moment. Yesterday I was speaking to as a part of a RWC column coming, a senior director at a global media firm, and we spoke about this WeTransfer, because they do all their stuff globally around the world with WeTransfer, and there will be conversations happening about not using WeTransfer anymore. But the discussion was, well, who do you jump to? Because even if they say no now, there's obviously the dint to themselves slightly by putting their nose above the parapet, but others are doing the same, as you said, Barry. So if you don't want your stuff doing this, you need to find other ways of transferring your files that you really have more control over.
Yeah, I come back to this idea that don't blame conspiracy where cock up is a perfectly viable alternative, and I think this is a cock up, and I think. Like you, I had friends working yesterday. We're going. You can see on social media going, "What do we use now? WeTransfers, taking ownership of your files." People read the story once and then assume that's the end of the story, sort of thing. But I think this will probably, as we've seen before with Instagram, with Dropbox, with all the other companies who tweak their T's and C's every couple of months and throw something in there they shouldn't. That it's going to keep happening, because it's just the nature of this thing. But I'm not too. Michael Deere says it sounds like I'm in the big file transfer market pocket. I've got my WeTransfer t-shirt on, but I just Anyway.
Dr. XXX, I'm sorry, I don't know who Dr. XXX is. We'll just call him Dr. XXX on the channel. Posts the link to the BBC report, of course, they're just being referred to. And in this BBC report, it says a WeTransfer spokesman told BBC News, quote, "We don't use machine learning or any form of AI to process content shared via WeTransfer, nor do we sell content or data to any third parties." Well, the first part of that sentence, we don't use machine learning or any form of AI to process content shared via WeTransfer. Is that a bit of legal slippery talk, which is we don't do that at the moment, but we were looking for it in the new T's and C's, and now we've been found out, and the use of the present tense is correct, but they were wanting to do this in the future. Yeah, you may well be right, Barry. Maybe I'm just being a grumpy old man and being overly cynical, but I'm paying for this service, and that was not what I wanted to see arriving in my potential T's and C's due to go live in a few weeks.
Yeah, they did explain that on their blog. So it was as you said previously. So they're looking at the use of AI to scan, particularly for child abuse images, and that was why they rewrote the terms to give them the right to do it in that eventuality. They said they're not doing it currently, and now they've pulled all the machine learning stuff out because they say we're not doing this at this present time. We're still looking at it. If we do, would we address the terms at a later date? So, I mean,
I can see they're in between.
I can only take their word for it, but
but I do understand the problem about they're a content distribution engine, and they will be held liable for some of the appalling things that might be tried to be sent across their service. I really do get that problem, but I'm afraid to say that's the business that they put themselves in, and. I'm not as a paying customer. I'm not at all happy with the way that this is being handled.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, let's move on. And Darren, there's news of Chrome OS and Android.
There is, yes. So this has been on the cards for a while. Last summer, it was confirmed by Google that they'd be combining certain parts of the stack that is Chrome OS and Chrome OS and Android would start to be built using shared components. Already, this has been kind of in the works because Chrome OS gained the ability several years ago to run Android apps, and then they were merging development. And it was rumoured late last year that they were actually considering entirely combining the two into a single platform. But at that time, there had been no formal announcement. This was an anonymous tip to a chap working at, I think, Android Insider or Android Authority, one of those very well-informed blog sites. Well, there still hasn't been exactly an official announcement, but Samir Samat, who is president of the Android ecosystem at Google, he was talking to Lance Ulanoff at TechRadar and mentioned almost casually that he was interested to know how Mr. Ulanoff managed using his MacBook Pro, his Apple Watch, his iPhone, and how the whole ecosystem works together. Because, he said, we're going to be combining Chrome OS and Android into a single platform. So I'm interested in how people are using their laptops and what they're getting done. And that comes kind of out of nowhere in terms of, as I said, there's been no official announcement whatsoever, but you can't get much more, authoritative than the president of the Android ecosystem. So it looks like, this is finally happening, this thing that we kind of anticipated for a while. And I think it does make sense because Chrome OS, as soon as it gained the ability to run Android apps, it lost its distinctiveness, which I think was making less and less sense anyway. I mean, originally the idea of an operating system which was a browser. Okay, I see it, very cut down, very basic, and it's just the pressure has been to make it able to do more and more things. So now maintaining two separate code bases, what's the point?
Yeah, well, on what's the point? I'd imagine like a large number of schools use Chromebooks in particular for the point that it's pretty difficult to infect a Chromebooks and install apps and that kind of stuff. I mean, there is no real. I know a lot of them use Android now, but you can lock that down. So I wonder whether an IT manager in a school, for example, will be that happy at the idea that. Presumably they're merging to Android. They're not going to ditch Android and take on Chrome OS. So that feels like. That's a big change, but John, you had a point to make?
Yeah, there is actually an interesting wrinkle with running Android apps on Chrome OS, which, as you said, Darren, came a few years ago, which is that Android apps running on Chrome OS are actually running their own entirely separated sandbox, including their own IP address and routing, which means that there's no means of getting to an Android app from running on Chrome OS from outside the machine. Now, you could say that's a security point of view, that's okay, but you could also say it's a massive pain in the neck if you're trying to, remote control into an app that's running, an Android app that's happens to be running on Chrome OS rather than normal Android. Now, if, I don't have any particular skin in the game as to whether they merge Android on top of Chrome OS or Chrome OS underneath or on top of Android. And you're quite right with what's been said about maintaining one code base and so forth. As long as we get some element of control here if the merge goes the wrong way from that point of view. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of Android app developers who are going to be quite annoyed. And also that they don't basically throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of all of the things that are undoubtedly very good and very strong with Chrome OS.
I have to say my assumption was that there would be a Chrome OS kind of desktop mode within Android, which, I mean, most of what's special about Chrome OS is its sandboxing, is its locker-downness, which it seems like it shouldn't be too hard to port into Android, particularly since Android already has, basically an entirely functional desktop by this stage. So this is all speculation, but it makes sense to me.
Well, but just sorry, Lee, but Android 16 has a new desktop mode, doesn't it? So maybe this is what they're thinking will be the new Chrome OS. But sorry, Lee.
No, I think generally, we all seem to be quite positive about this, which is possibly first time since episode 73. I think this has happened. So, I wonder if there's also a chance to rebrand here too, because when I talk to customers, they understand that Android is different to iOS, but Chrome is a browser, and as Darian said, because that was the original premise of the Chromebooks. So selling Chromebooks has always been a confusing thing for people that are not very techy because they don't really understand what it does. So, perhaps some sort of clever A-book type branding could really help here. But I think what really interested me, and we spoke about this a few weeks ago when we were talking about Apple's new launch, that it seems to me that Apple, with this liquid glass strategy, is sort of heading towards a cohesiveness between its different devices. And in my utterly untrained opinion, this will come to full fruition when they basically can say, you buy one app once, it will work on part of everything. So you have this, the proper ecosystem. Obviously the apps will work either in full or in part, but you get the idea. And if Chrome can pull this off, so they do crack the nut that basically in a laptop format, your Android apps will fundamentally, it doesn't matter what you do, they will work between. They basically generate a better ecosystem than what they have now, and it's not bad now. But as John said, there are some wrinkles in it. If they can crack that bit, and Apple do it the same, and I'm going really into Mystic Meg mode here, so I am blaming my hay fever medicine. If they pull this off, where's Microsoft's version of this? Has anyone seen the sales busting Windows tablet in the last 5 years? So they really have got a chance to sort of put some distance between them and some other competitors. I'm quite excited by this.
Well, I was going to say, Apple have in a sense done this because applications written for iOS and iPad OS will run on a Mac, an M-based Mac, unless the developer explicitly forbids it from doing so. In fact, they'll even quite happily download and install onto Vision OS as well, because again, that's an ARM-based processor. So Apple has the full facilities in the software development kit, and has done for 3, 4, 5 years now, where you can write an application, say for example for a phone, and the whole UI can then basically self-expand itself out onto a tablet, and also out full screen mode on a desktop, and the framework handles all of that positioning and layout and stuff for you automatically. If you care to go down that route. Of course, there's an awful lot of legacy apps which would require rewriting to make that happen. But nevertheless, this kind of unified platform thing, I think you're absolutely right about the and it's clear from the numbering. Version 26 is what everything's going to be, and there really will be a case of write something and try and deploy it everywhere. And I really do think that Android needs to be getting into that kind of space as well.
And Lee, you mentioned about Microsoft. Well, on Xbox and PC now, you're seeing a lot of movement of games between those two platforms. They announced this week a new service where you can basically stream games you bought on different PC stores on your Xbox or your Windows PCs. So they are making moves in that direction as well. I think this is very much a trend of everybody trying to make you buy the content in one place and you can play it wherever you like, and streaming and the power of the different OSs is certainly helping with that.
Yeah, my apologies. I discounted the Xbox there. In that field, they do seem to be pushing. I just wish they'd push harder in other areas.
Well, they've got any other areas left, really, though, have they? They're sort of desktop and
I don't know. It sounds like Nokia's up for sale again. They can have another crack at that.
Well, that went so well last time, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, doke. Let's shuffle along, and this one's with you, Lee.
Yes. Now, if I were to say the word nudify, then it's probably a new lexicon entry for many listeners, but one which isn't too hard to define. And if you haven't joined the dots, then a nudify app or website will undress, in inverted commas, any image you put into it. For example, if I popped a photo of John, resplendent in a fine suit, into a nudify site after a few moments of computer wizardry, I would be presented with the same photo, but the suit would be gone. And the image of John would be nude, in inverted commas again, and we could all admire his six-pack.
It would reveal my Schwarzenegger-like physique, obviously.
It is. Your six-pack and your hot hardware. Absolutely. No problem at all.
Six-pack.
Now, what's slightly concerning is that the popularity of this type of site, which you think would be quite niche, has mushroomed. This has all come off the back of a report led by an independent researcher called Santiago Lakatos, and I've absolutely butchered that last name. He normally goes on social media by Santiago L. I can understand now why. But he's also backed by quite a few sort of big media players, 404 Media, Bellingcat, Der Spiegel, The Guardian, Wired, and Indicator. And basically they looked at 85 of these nudify sites, and the results are quite interesting. You may be surprised to hear they're also extremely profitable. The report suggests that 18 of the websites made between $2.6 and $18.4 million in the past 6 months. They also point out that these numbers are possibly much lower because they can't put a figure on transactions which are made off the platform by sort of applications like Telegram and things like that. And Der Spiegel indicated that one prominent player in the sector may have a multi-million-dollar budget already. The researchers calculated that these websites get a combined average of about 18.5 million visitors basically each over the last 6 months. Now, if you can think of a genuine reason why anyone would want to make a nude photo of anyone for purposes other than exploitation, then, you know, I'd be quite staggered. Nudify sites are the evolution of the deepfake generators, which started popping up about 5 or 6 years ago. And the report highlights that AI has supercharged these sites, and their bread and butter, basically, is transforming photos into non-consensual explicit imagery and abusive imagery, including CSAM material. So, you know, not a lot to love here. One researcher of the paper told Wired, Silicon Valley's laissez-faire approach to generative AI has been allowed to persist, and this should have ceased. They should have ceased providing any and all services to AI nudifiers when it was clear that their only use case was sexual harassment. And this leads to the other side of this story, which is who is providing the technology behind these. Because of the 85 sites covered by the research, 62 used hosting or content delivery from either Amazon or Cloudflare, while Google's sign-on system was used by 54 of them. Now, in response to the researchers, Cloudflare didn't bother responding. Amazon and Google gave the usual people using our services must abide by T's and C's and will take action, etc., etc. But, you know, we've talked many times over many years about tech platforms and payment services providers, advertisers that are being used for nefarious means and holding their hands up to say it's not their fault. Now, but the researchers really are pointing the finger at tech companies, and they're saying only when the businesses who facilitate these apps take targeted action will meaningful progress be made in making these apps harder to access and profit from. And if websites are harder to discover, access and use, then the audience and revenue will shrink. I mean, no one's under any illusions that just sort of taking them off Amazon will stop the problem. They'll pop up somewhere else like whack-a-mole. But, you know, frankly, if Amazon and Cloudflare and Google can't sort of really sort that end out, then it's a bit of a it's a bit of a poor show. But anyway, whilst progress in tackling this has been a bit glacial, we do know that some progress has been made. Wired reports that San Francisco city attorney sued 16 non-consensual image generation services. Developers behind celebrity deepfake sites were unmasked by Microsoft, while Meta has filed a lawsuit against a company which repeatedly posted nudify ads on its platform. I wonder if it also refunded them. In the US, the Take It Down Act put requirements onto tech companies to remove non-consensual image abuse quickly, and the UK government is making it illegal to create explicit deepfakes. But until then, it is predictably profitable for a few, at heavy cost for others.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what to say about this story other than to shake your head in despair. But Darren, any thoughts?
I was just pondering. I was honestly, I mean, maybe I'm missing the important point here. I was honestly surprised it's so profitable, though. I would have thought the internet is absolutely full of naked women and indeed men, if you wish to find them. I'm surprised that people are paying money to, I mean, I haven't seen what these apps can generate, but I have to assume, having seen plenty of AI-generated images, it's going to be a little bit uncanny. I can't imagine it's that satisfactory. But apparently I'm wrong. Apparently there is money to be made. What's it they say? No one ever went broke underestimating the taste of the consumer.
From again, it's I have a loose understanding this, but it's not getting pictures of famous people necessarily. It's getting pictures of people you know transformed, which is the most worrying thing.
That is what I assumed, but I would not have thought that the results were any more satisfactory than just picturing it in your head. Probably less so.
John?
No, I think the titillation is not the, to use a very old word, is not the aim here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, clearly using AI to, generate a naked version of Princess Diana may appeal to some, but I think we could, anyone with even half a brain cell would realise that it almost certainly was fake, and it would circulate on the internet and then hopefully disappear. I think you're absolutely right in saying that the purpose of doing this is for exploitation, manipulation, threatening people. I have these photos of you, relationship abuse. I mean, the list is very long and extremely unpleasant here, and it's not hard to see why. If you wanted to try and control somebody, maybe in an abusive relationship, then generating what looks reasonably like them, because if you are an abusive male and have a girlfriend that you are abusing, for example, hopefully not that many people will have seen her naked, and therefore there is a credibility to some of these images which would not necessarily which people would accept, is what I'm saying, if you're trying to use them in such an appalling way. So yes, they need to be shut down. The worry I have, of course, is that under which regulatory framework is this being done, under which jurisdiction? The UK government can pass an act to say it's illegal, but where was the generation done? And if you're coming in through an encrypted connection into one of these sites, how do you prove it was them anyway? I mean, that the whole thing is a mess, and I don't see how, without some sort of world government kind of agreement on fundamentals here, how this is ever going to get fixed.
Michael Deere makes a good point that he's saying that I actually think it'd be school children all bullying each other as a use case. Absolutely. Do not underestimate the prevalence of this stuff in schools. Just before we leave this horrible topic, Lee, we're also getting to the point towards the end of this month where I use the phrase legitimate porn sites are going to have to start to implement age blockers.
Yes. In just a little over a week. It's one of the facets of the Online Safety Act. It goes live, which essentially is to make it harder for under 18s to access explicit material. As Barry said, this is introducing age checks. Now, what is a little hazy, even today, is how certain sites are going to roll this out. Now, purely for the good of this podcast, I visited a bunch of reputable porn sites this morning, but I was kicked out.
Purely for research, yes.
Yeah, that's it. But I was kicked out before I could finish that research. But what I did find is I couldn't see one banner or warning or pop-up saying you're in the UK and from July 25th you'll need to do this. So and having a look at, so I took Pornhub as an example, could find nothing at all in the back. Sorry.
Rephrase that, please.
I will. Sorry, I'll cough so Darren has to cut that out. Right. Looking at Pornhub's T's and C's, I could find no information about what they plan to do. This is a concern for a service which goes live pretty imminently, but it's not a surprise because back in May, the EU started investigations into several porn sites which didn't appear to have measures in place at the time. Now, when the BBC reported that story, AYLO, AYLO, I think it's AYLO or ILO, that's the company which owns Pornhub, they said, "We will always comply with the law, but we hope that governments around the world will implement laws that protect the safety and security of users," which sounds to me about as proactive as McDonald's saying we hope the law will soon stop us putting glass into burgers. It really doesn't instill any confidence at all. But the problem, as we've covered time and again, is that age verification requires a transmission of some form of personal information. And that makes people nervous about what could go wrong given the companies which are being handed this information. So I guess that this is a bit like what Nick was talking about last week with Gmail's unsubscribe feature. It will only work if the mailing list plays by the rules, which was that RFC 8058, if I remember rightly. So I guess the age checks will only come in for the reputable porn sites. So apparently VPN sales are doing well.
Yes, not surprisingly. Okay, let's leave this horrible topic and we're sticking with AI with you, Darian.
Yeah, well, this is about, everybody's favourite band, the Velvet Sundown, who've racked up 1 million streams on Spotify, which is not, in the grand scheme of the music industry, it's not an enormous kind of world-changing degree of success, but let's just say it's a hell of a lot more than I've had. And it was recently revealed that they were, in fact, entirely AI generated. Their music was created by a computer. Their promotional images were made by a computer. Their PR was probably created by a person, but kind of fudged the issue about whether they were real people or just, artifacts in a neural network. And there's been a bit of a kind of kerfuffle rolling on about how everybody feels about this. But the thing that I thought was interesting, I think this was maybe The Guardian who did this report. They've been talking to music industry bigwigs about how they feel about the idea that I can't remember what it's called now. There's a cheapy website where you can make your own music. That whether this could be a proper competitor to your Taylor Swifts and your Olivia Rodrigos and so on. And the industry's not really a fan. Roberto Neri, chief executive of the Ivers Academy, said that these bands reaching big audiences without involving human creators, as if that is, somehow an offence. He says they raise serious concerns around transparency, authorship, and consent. I'm not really sure. I think that's a big reach. I think transparency, well, okay, maybe it's not transparent, but then I don't know. I know almost nothing about how almost every piece of music I hear was actually made. Authorship, well, that's okay. Maybe that's a concern for the music industry. But not for the man in the street, I would have thought. Consent. Am I being violated if I listen to an AI-generated piece of music and I haven't explicitly agreed to do so? There is I think if there's a legitimate question here, it's actually, we have to take a step back and say, what do we have the right to expect from our music? What actually is the kind of the fundamental principle? I think Mr. Neri here is jumping the gun rather and begging the question. Sophie Jones from the BPI says we're calling the UK government to introduce new transparency obligations for AI companies and the clear labelling of content solely generated by AI. And I bet you are. But to be honest, I don't really see that it's an enormous burden. I'm not sure what the downside is, but equally, I'm not sure I can really get alongside the kind of the fervour, the moral outrage which I read into some of those words. The best argument I heard was Liz Pelly, the author of Mood Machine, The Rise of Spotify and Cost of the Perfect Playlist, a book which I know we've all had by our bedside for some time. She points out that maybe the problem is not actually to do with the listeners being deceived. It's, again, this comes back over and over again in every discussion about AI, where did the music come from in the first place? Now, I've said a few times, every song that I write is basically just, a neural net inside my head, stealing bits from here and bits from there and recombining them in a hopefully plausible sounding way. But when machines do it, people feel a little bit differently about it. And questions of compensation do come up, and that certainly hasn't been addressed in the realm of Spotify. So there's, as I say, there is a discussion to be had here, but I feel like there's also a lot of disingenuous pearl clutching.
John?
Well, as I say, there's nothing new under the sun. Do the names Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan mean anything to you? Maybe not. Does the name Frank Farian mean anything to you? Well, yes, Frank Farian created the band Milli Vanilli in the 80s. And he hired two German-French models, Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan, to pretend to sing on the videos. And it came out and it was a big scandal. I'm using Perplexity here to remind me of this. I didn't realise, but I just discovered that Frank Farian was also behind Boney M, who also would appear had some issues with who was on the song itself. And let's not forget the very acrimonious court case between Frankie Goes to Hollywood and ZTT Records over what actually ended up on Relax and so forth. because there was an awful lot of other musicians there and not an awful lot of the original Frankie Goes to Hollywood band members. So there's nothing really new here. It's now AI, and they've kind of tweaked it. They've tweaked the knob up to 11 by actually creating the videos and the imagery and everything else as well, all on a computer. I say go for it, because if you like the tune, then bop to it, and if you don't, then don't.
Well, you've just reminded me of one of my all-time favourite Trevor Horn quotes. He says that the bass player from Frankie Goes to Hollywood, he may not actually play on the record, but I made sure that his spirit was in there.
But I mean, if they want to go down this line of we must flag AI generated music, then what are we doing about what they call it, the voice trainers or whatever, where they adjust the pitch?
Auto-tune.
Thank you. The music industry has grasped this technology for years, and now when it's starting to be to the detriment of artists, they start to get a little bit worried about it. I think, I think that eventually people aren't going to be too attracted to AI music. I think there's a interest in it now, perhaps, but the thing of what makes great musicians and bands and whatever is the whole experience, going to see them live and seeing performance and interviews and whatever. AI can't do that by itself. You may be able to get the odd tune in the same way you can get a one-hit wonder right now, but I think the longevity of a good musician is not under threat from AI. But Lee, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I've got a slightly different take on that, actually, because, I'll just go back in history slightly. One of the biggest hits of the 80s was Orinoco Fly by Enya, who is still phenomenally popular, though not mainstream, obviously. But she's never done a solo tour, and her live performances be counted on one hand. The reason being that her music is too complicated to perform live. So that's always asked questions about how much of it actually did she ever do. But in 10 days' time, I will be in Manchester for the MegaCon convention, which is like Comic-Con, but just a different brand, surrounded by lots of people dressed as a character called Hatsune Miku, who is a virtual pop star from Japan. Think her as a cartoon character who sings songs. Now, her voice is made via a program called Vocaloid, which you can download Vocaloid stuff and do your own stuff. You'd basically type in the lyrics and some tune melodies and Miku will sing. But to give you the scale of Miku, her last tour, and she performs live on stage as a hologram. So you go and see Miku like you do any other band. She toured Asia in venues with seats between 5,000 and 15,000 people. There's merch, there's video games, there's endorsements with Coca-Cola. She's as real as any pop star, apart from the fact that she doesn't age. And I think there's a possibility, because, let's face it, music's about making money. I think it was Mike from the Young Ones that said that. Bands like Velvet Sundown and the ones which will follow may desensitize us to AI-generated music, when in a few years' time, when we absolutely don't care, publishers will start to then hit us with the new AI track from Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston or George Michael to make even more trucks of gold. So I think this is possibly the start of something.
That already happens. And for I can't remember you called Pikachu, whatever she's called, Bob the Builder or Mr. Blobby, these sort of fake characters have been around for decades. Darius,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was just wondering whether there's actually a person behind this this virtual pop star pulling the strings and writing or at least curating the songs. Because if so, it is a very slightly different thing. There's a chap, I don't know if he listens to the PC Pro podcast, but I believe he used to write for PC Pro way back before I even joined. He does a project called John and Libby where he writes and gigs music, and the shtick is that he writes he writes the songs and he plays the keyboards or whatever, and Libby is a computer generated vocalist. Whom he programs to do the singing, and obviously I don't think anyone would say, "Oh, that's not real." That's that ought to be banned. That ought to be transparently disclosed. So I don't know. I feel like there's something about the turning out of it, by pressing a button, the mindlessness of it, which I think as people who enjoy art, some of us who like to pretend to be people who make art, that feels somehow offensive. That feels like it's kind of overstepping a boundary. But it's very hard to define exactly where the boundary is and why indeed it should exist.
Okay, I think we've got to move on and go and record our number one hits. But before we do that, let's take the nibs. And first one's for you, Lee.
Yes, back in April, Secretary of the U.S. Army Daniel Driscoll called for the Army to include right to repair provisions in all existing contracts and also ensure these provisions are included in all new contracts. And this seems to be moving forward with cross-party senators pushing for change. Now, this is nib, so I can't deep dive it, but the gist is this. The US military spends trillions on weaponry, but the increasing sophistication of it has led to an increase in outside contractors handing in very prohibitive repair clauses. And does that sound familiar? And critically, these people are not delivering on the support that they promised. So there's various, the whole swathe of these tales. I'll just give you two. Retired Master Sergeant. A Master Sergeant is basically a fixer, not a character in a game. Wesley Reed was deployed in Afghanistan. His job was basically to keep a CT scanner in hospitals working. And during deployment, he lost access to a microcontroller that gave him access to the diagnostics. The manufacturer said it would not send a new controller because the device was too old and told him to buy a new one. Bear in mind, this was on the front line, keeping soldiers alive. And another Master Sergeant Kerry Clark, who worked in Germany with a drone called the RQ-11. And this failed often to start up after it had a hard landing. Basically, it just hit the ground hard and it wouldn't start up. And then a fix was to send the entire system back to the manufacturer at a repair cost of $26,000 a machine. Anyway, when they hit a backlog because the manufacturers couldn't get them back out, the Clark's team was given a temporary repair approval, and discovering that inside the machine there was a connector on the motherboard that kept popping off every time it hit the deck because it didn't have a retainer clip on it. So basically they shoved the connector back on, put a blob of glue on it, and the problem has gone away. So I could go on, there's a lot of this, so right to repair hitting the Army too.
Okay. Next one's with me, and this is a new world record set for data transfer speeds by researchers in Japan who have apparently transmitted over 125,000 gigabytes of data per second over a distance of about 1,000 miles. They did this using a new fiber optic core that basically seems to splice together about 19 different fibers over that distance, but that is incredibly fast. Apparently, I think it was twice the speed of the previous record. So obviously this isn't going to be technology that's going to be running from your local cabinets, but if you're talking about stuff like undersea cables that can carry huge amounts of data, could obviously be a very important breakthrough. Last one is with you, John.
Yes, Microsoft has apparently announced that new features in Office on Windows 10 will stop being deployed in 2026. So basically they're going to go for a code freeze on Office apps on Windows 10 starting in August of 2026. This is all obviously part of their push to try and get people onto Windows 11. We've talked before about how Windows 10 goes end of life in a few months' time, but there are various ways you can get extensions and pay fors, and the one I think was talked about a few weeks ago was if you agree to use Microsoft Backup, you can then get another year on Windows 10 for free as a home user and so forth. So they really are starting to put the screws on now. Now, whether or not losing new features in Office is a terribly big deal would, I guess, depend upon how important Office is to you. And do you really need that or a nice download of LibreOffice? But that, as they say, is a decision left for the reader.
Michael Deere, who's going to get a credit in this episode before long, says it's time to roll back to Windows 10 if they're leaving Office alone, which is probably a good point. Okay, it's hot hardware time, and this one's with you, Mr. H.
It is. Now, I do seem to have a bit of a reputation amongst certainly our live pod team over on Discord that I come up with sort of the crazy and the silly because, well, why not? So I thought what I'll cover off this week is a new device here in the lab. It's from a company called Ericsson, but not Ericsson as in telco. This is Ericsson, ERICHSEN.DE, and they make precision measurement tools. And this is a device for measuring the hardness of surfaces, the scratch resistantness of surfaces. Now I hold it up to the screen here. It looks like a sort of a nice sort of modern fountain pen kind of thing. At one end you have got a very high precision scratch point and roller, so you can roll it along the surface. Then on the side you can basically change the the push on the spring. And it comes with 3 springs. One spring is up to 3 newtons, the next spring is 10 newtons, and the third spring is 20 newtons. And what you do is you dial up a level here, and then you can roll it across the screen of a phone or a tablet or anything you want to check the scratch worthiness of it, and it's completely calibrated and very lovely and very high precision. And it's about the only game in town if you want to do this kind of stuff properly, because there are different strengths of scratch worthiness on, for example, mobile phones, and those phones that have got folding screens tend to have very, very soft screens. So the question is, how do we measure this? How do we know how scratch worthy something is going to be? And the answer is, you use a tool like this. Running Duck asking, do you use it on porn sites to check for hardness? No, that's something quite different, sir, because this is calibrated. If you want to see, you go to the very edge of the screen. Obviously, you don't want to put a great scratch across the screen of something, and you can basically change the springs in it to go for the different levels of hardness, and put it in the corner and have a little wiggle and see if there is a permanent scratch. If there isn't, you increase the stiffness on it and have another go, and then go up in Newton levels, or levels of 1 Newton at a time, until you find out when it actually does scratch. Now, this is incredibly nerdy, and I love it, and I thought I'd inflict this upon you just as a little bit of insight onto what's actually involved in working out just how strong, say, some claimed screen is on your new shiny phone. And it's a great tool. There is only one significant downside to it, and that is the cost, which is robust, I think is probably a good term to use. Its UK landed price is £1,428, including VAT. And if you want a calibration, because you need to have not only the springs calibrated, but also the surface tip needs to be calibrated, and that's another £1,245 calibration on top. So this is not something that you're going to go and buy and take down to the pub with you. But if you really do want to know whether these things are, whether the claims of phone screens or tablet screens or whatever are really what they're claiming to be, you need something like this.
Hang on,
Darian is waving his finger furiously.
Hang on, I've got the question first. How many newtons do you need to scratch an iPhone? That's what I want to know.
Well, I can't tell you that, mate, because that's confidential, mate.
There's no point in carrying on
what I will tell you is
that
one of these foldy screen type things, which we know have got very soft surfaces, because you could just feel it with a thumbnail. They are really quite terrible, compared to like Gorilla Glass and so forth.
Go on, Darren.
So you say the only downside is the price, but I think I perceive another downside, if I've correctly understood how this works. When you get your lovely new phone and you want to find out exactly how scratch resistant the screen is, it does appear that the only way to find out is to scratch it.
Yep.
With this device. Right. So I feel like, so it's not really a consumer friendly.
No, I will confess this is not really a consumer, certainly not a, 2,700 quid or whatever. And scratching your screen deliberately is not something I would recommend anybody does. But then, there are sites like iFixit and so forth that take things apart, and this kind of information is really useful. And if you really do want to know this new screen that's on some new product, just how good it is, then you need something like this. Michael Deere says, can you go into an Apple shop and try it on their display stuff? I think you might get thrown out, though I do agree that's really quite tempting.
You can, but possibly only once.
But okay, you're not going to tell us on specific iPhone models, but I've always been really skeptical, because every time they release a new version of a phone with a new version of Gorilla Glass, they go, oh, it's 25% more robust than the last one. In your experience, having tested these things for years, is that true?
Yes.
Does the glass get...
This kind of properly hardened glass is getting better and more scratch resistant. And actually, it is quite astonishing as to how good some of these screen panels are these days. And this really matters for something like it's arguably less important for a tablet, but it's really important for a phone that you're going to put into your pocket alongside keys and money and stuff like that. Phones are exposed to a lot more sort of scratchy direct contact than say a laptop screen would be, for example.
It's random that this comes up because my wife and I both commented just anecdotally just the other day. We noticed that the amount of time between disastrous phone screen incidents it's been getting longer and longer. It's been growing almost exponentially over the past sort of 10 or 15 years. It used to be you could pretty much guarantee that you would end up replacing your phone because the screen was no longer safe for human handling, and that hasn't happened for a while. So.
I mean, I don't use screen protectors. People like to put a layer on top of their screen coating, and to be honest, I really don't think that's a terribly big problem these days. But the ones that you really do have to look out for are, as I said earlier, things like the folding screens. But in a sense, they have an element of protection because you fold it so the screens are inherently protected when you put it into your pocket, because otherwise they would be somewhat of a disaster.
I wonder also if it's actually better for a screen to have a bit of give in it compared to being brittle. But that's a materials science question, which is perhaps beyond our reach.
So I do accept that this is very, very nerdy. Lee, any thoughts? Do you need one of these?
No, I do not need one of these, but I know plenty of people that do, because I deal with vendors that sell purely screens. That's all they do. And when you're, for example, in a laptop, when you just take a bog standard 15.6-inch laptop and you break the screen in it, what can go in it can be frankly anything, as long as it's up to the same sort of resolution, the connector's in the right point, and it's roughly the same sort of refresh rate and stuff like that. And you can put frankly anything in it. But if you're the wholesaler that's importing these screens from wherever and you're talking to the distributor, you need a way to make sure that the screens that are coming into your warehouse that you're going to flog on are good. And this is the way that you do it. It's a quality control test. So for people like that are buying screens in by the thousand, they need to test that what is coming into the warehouse is the same as what the sample version was that came in, and this is the way that you do it. So for people like that, this tool is really, really useful. It's certainly not a consumer tool, but making sure that the consumer has a screen which is scratch resistant, and particularly third-party screens as we go more into repair. And there are going to be more third-party screens coming to the market. This sort of testing is more important.
Well, you're more than welcome to send them in my direction. I will be reassuringly expensive. No, you're absolutely right. This is in no way a consumer tool, but you've given a very good use case where things like this are actually quite important, and maybe not even necessarily from the original OEM manufacturer.
Okay, unless anyone's got any further questions.
Retney is asking, is there a scale on this device? Yes, there is. In fact, if I hold it very close to the camera, I don't know if you can see that there is a Newton meters scale on there. So yes, it is all properly calibrated and so forth. How often does it need to be recalibrated? Well, that's a very interesting question, and I could nerd about this for at least the next 20 minutes about ISO 17025 calibrations.
You've got 10 seconds.
Since the springs are kept actually in a little box here in an uncompressed state, I think you'll get away with quite a few years between calibrations.
Okay. Alrighty. I am setting the poll live in the field for those of us who are joining us live on Discord, which is pcpro.link/Discord. If you want to join us at 1 p.m. every Thursday and join the hoi polloi who join us. Darian, let's start with you.
Yeah, I quibbled. I said, I don't think this is very consumer friendly, and we agreed that. Coltragascus on Discord says it's not consumer, it's prosumer, which I think he implied is maybe appropriate for PC Pro. But I think even that is not quite right. I think it's industrial, really, because it literally you have to damage the thing, the object device, in order to use it with this. I don't think this is something that even, big IT departments are going to be using. I think this is back at the OEM stage. And for that reason, I think it's not for me or for, any, the vast majority of people I know. Not going to comment on John. But in general, I think it's a little bit too specialized for me. I do kind of like how low tech it is, but on the whole, I'm struggling to call this hot, I'm afraid. So I'm a no.
Lee.
I like this, but I absolutely hear what Darian is saying. But if I'm a phone manufacturer in central London and I'm buying screens, frankly, from anywhere because the OEMs won't actually make any ones for release, I need to know that someone up the chain has tested them and this is the device to do it. And knowing that my supplier has used one of these and I go into their warehouse and before I buy 84 pallets of Samsung screens and I see them using this to test the quality, it really does reassure, particularly when it's properly calibrated. And it sort of makes me very amused that it is such a absolutely 1920s bit of tech as far as just a spring-loaded thing, but I really like that. But there are lots of little sort of shuttles and skates you could put it into to sort of really sort of hold it steady. So yeah, it's absolutely for a tiny percentage of our listenership, possibly even less than 1%, but it is hot.
Put me down for what that man just said. I have no use for this device, but I'm glad it exists because it helps people like John to keep the manufacturers honest. So I'm going to go hot. John?
Oh, well, everyone is absolutely correct. This has absolutely no use case whatsoever for every reader of PC Pro, except probably for me. And that's fine. It is the niche of the niche. I thought, why not just go really far out there left field on nicheness for 1 week? But I thought it would just basically give a bit of a useful sort of tech insight into the interesting world of screens and how these things are designed, manufactured and evaluated. So I think it's hot for its intended use case, because actually in its intended use case it's kind of mandatory rather than just merely hot. But for everybody else it's colder than a cold thing. But I love it to bits because I think it's just barking mad.
You came dangerously close to a win here, John. At 42% say hot, 58% say not. So it's a narrow defeat amongst the audience.
I must confess, to get 48% saying hot for
42.
something as absolutely off the charts, barking mad as this, is actually quite an achievement. I'm very proud of everybody. Thank you very much.
Well, take it about Mr. H and take it about Mr. Graham Smith and Grant, because we're off until this time next week, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm actually off for the next 2 weeks after this, so you'll see me in August.
I'm off for 6. Luck it up, suckers.
All right, fine. I fold. But I do have to go because I've got all those windows on my desktop that I told you about. So thanks all.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Take
Bye,
care.
folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.